Welcome to Dicta, your weekly dose of law school and bar exam info. I'm Carrie Ann.
And I'm Puyan, and we're the co-founders of Vinco.
And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics. We are going to talk about putting into place a system for preparing for final exams.
Oh boy.
You excited?
Yeah.
Really excited.
Yeah.
So, you have to prepare for your finals, right? There's no getting around that. You have to do something. But as someone who works in academic support and who works with students privately, when I see all the crazy things people are doing that are not efficient and that are stressing them out so much, I go a little crazy. So I want to talk about how to put some of those systems in place so that you can be adequately prepared for your final exams. And I thought it would be fun to do this with a little case study. So how did you prepare for your final exams?
Oh, you thought it would be fun.
Fun for me, anyway.
So, the way I studied for final exams was every time I was given a homework assignment, I would brief the cases, and I had a long list of case briefs, right? And then about a month before final exams, I would begin to compile all my case briefs and basically reduce them in length to like maybe a couple statements of facts and a rule, and I would just try to get the gist of each case. Yeah, Carrie Ann's hyperventilating for the record. And basically I would just take all my case briefs and then I would just try to shorten it, go through it, shorten it a little more, go through it, shorten it a little more. And I mean, I got through it, but in retrospect I probably spent 2 to 3 times as much time preparing as I should have. And also, like, when I was taking the final exam, I would look for similar fact patterns, but similar fact patterns didn't always pop up, so I wasn't sure which rule to apply, and I don't think it was the best approach in retrospect.
I'm going to go ahead and agree with that statement. So if you tune out everything else I say, really if you tune out everything else I say ever, this should be what you hear, okay? This is like my number one tip for being a law student. Outlining is not case-based. It's not about summarizing cases. It is about the law. It is about breaking down the law and putting things together based on the law, not based on cases.
So what does that mean? Should I not have briefed cases throughout the year?
No, don't be silly. Of course you have to brief cases. Briefing cases serves a few important purposes. First, it stops you from being terrified of being called on in class, or at least helps you feel less terrified. So you know you have this document that you can read off of if you need to. And it helps you get an idea of what's going on. But it's also really the first step in breaking down information. So you're understanding what happened in that case and what law was used in that case. But then you have to build on that. The next step are your class notes, right? What is your professor saying is important? What should you be pulling out of these cases that maybe you didn't see when you were just reading them the first time? And what connections can you draw between the cases? So briefing is really important, and I get sad when my second year students tell me they've given it up because really they're just making more work for themselves when outlining time comes around. So briefing is important and helpful, but just copying and pasting all of your briefs into one document and taking out some of the extraneous information, that is not working with the material. That is not what I like to call breaking it down. That's just a copy and paste job.
So what do you mean when you say draw connections between cases? I don't really know what that means.
It's amazing. They let him be a lawyer. So what I mean is case law builds on each other, right? The court is interpreting law in different ways. So let's take negligence, for example, right? Negligence as a part of torts. So you might read one case that gives you the overarching rule for negligence, which I learned is duty, breach, causation, damages.
Right.
Your professor might use slightly different words, right? But then you're going to have 6 other cases, one that specifically explains what's breach, one that specifically explains what's duty. So you have to understand that those cases, you shouldn't look at them in a bubble. They're not their own individual thing. The first one tells you these are the elements for negligence, and then they build on that and define it. What exactly does that mean, and what are examples of when there was negligence and wasn't negligence? Does that clear it up for you?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, but how do you know when two topics are related? So, like, are there any tools you could use that the professor would give you? Or, I mean, I
feel like I'm getting a leading question here. Do you want me to talk about the syllabus? You want me to talk about the syllabus?
I mean, is that a helpful tool?
Yeah. So the syllabus is like, this is like my secret. These are my secrets, Puyan. But I guess we can share them with you guys. So the very first thing you need to start this breaking it down process is to look at your syllabus. Now, there's always that like outlier professor who just gives you a list with like case names on it and page numbers, so that might not be that helpful. In that case, you can take what I'm saying and look at your textbook.
Yeah, you can look at the table of contents, right?
But most professors at least tell you like, this is the subject matter and these are the cases that go with it. So that's how you know where to start. So if you're going to sit down and say, today I need to figure out negligence, you should be able to look at your syllabus and say, these were the 12 cases that we read under negligence. I need to now figure out how they built on each other and draw those connections.
Oh, that makes sense. I could have probably saved myself a lot of time and done better, performed better on my exams had I done that.
The moral of the story is, Puyan did fine, lived to tell the tale, graduated with honors. I think he made more work for himself, though.
Yeah, definitely.
So
it was more stressful than it needed to be.
That's what I mean when I say there's not a good way or a bad way or a right way or a wrong way. That's so different from what I did, but it worked and you did fine. You did better than fine, but you could have maybe had a little more free time or had a little less stress if you had used a more streamlined process.
How do you feel about practice questions? I mean, like, specifically, what if the practice questions were not created by that professor? Or what if you don't have access to old exams from that professor? What should you do?
That's okay. Most of my professors didn't have practice exams on file, or they only gave out one test towards the end of the semester. So I am a big fan, and I can't believe I'm about to say this on a video recording. I'm a big fan of commercial study aids, and they might kick me out of like being a professor for saying this, because you always hear from professors, they're the worst things ever, don't use them. So this is my thought on that. Professors don't want you to use them as a supplement for taking class notes, preparing for class, and really breaking down the material.
Right.
And I wholeheartedly agree with that, because it's not a replacement for putting in the work.
Yeah.
But at the back of those fancy study guides are tons and tons of questions. And that is where I did almost all of my questions from commercial study aids. You want to do them in the same format that your professor's tests will be in. So if you have an essay test, practice essays, multiple choice, practice multiple choice. But practice questions make all of the difference. That is the number one thing when students come and say, I didn't do so well last semester and want my help to do better. I start with, how did you study? And almost all of them said, yeah, I did practice questions, 1 or 2 per class. I'm talking about 40, 50, 60, if it's multiple choice questions, in the hundreds for each class. So we're talking about a volume practice here.
That makes sense, because as you create your outline, you could test the efficiency and effectiveness of your outline with the practice questions to see, am I able to answer these questions based on my understanding of the law based on my outline?
Right.
Because if you really aren't able to apply the law to different sets of facts, your outline needs to be tweaked or recreated altogether.
Exactly. You don't know what you don't know until you try a practice question. And then you don't know if what you're doing in the outline is actually effective or not.
Makes sense.
So I think I have 3 takeaway points here outside of what we talked about for outlining. You want to start this process sooner rather than later. I just did a Periscope on this recently about how Thanksgiving is too late to start outlining. And I made that mistake
me too.
First semester one all year, and I had a very, very, very miserable Thanksgiving.
Did that my first 3 semesters.
Oh,
I'm a late learner.
Some of us caught on more quickly than others. But I was like, I have 4 days break and it'll be no problem whatsoever. And I mean, that was my first full law school meltdown. I was in my bed doing work for 4 days. My parents went to Thanksgiving without me. I stayed home by myself. It was horrible. So Thanksgiving was only like 2 weeks before the start of finals. And now that you think about that, are you like, what was I doing with my life? Yeah. No. And the problem is you just don't know. Like, I didn't know. Nobody told me. I thought that was plenty of time and an acceptable plan. Like, I wasn't trying to be irresponsible or pushing off school or anything like that. I was just, I thought that would be enough. So I'm telling you, now you don't have the same excuse. You don't have the excuse of no one told me. We're telling you. There's not enough time. I think the good point to start outlining is once you finished one part of your syllabus. So once you finish the first topic on your syllabus, you can start working through it. And then you just keep going a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, so you avoid that overwhelm. So tip 1 is start early. Tip 2 is to schedule, right? So don't just don't go into it and say like, oh, I'll outline a little bit here, a little bit there without any real plan, because before you know it, the end of the semester is going to come around and you're going to say, oh my god, I'm totally done with my contracts outline, but I haven't even started on civil procedure. They're all important, right? They're all 3-4 credit classes, so you want to make sure that you space them out. This can be as fancy as some online scheduling system or a pen and a piece of paper, but just say, this is when I'm starting, this is when I need to be done, and try to plan yourself some solid sessions to accomplish that in. And my third tip is to not forget about the all-important practice questions, because they really can make all the difference in how you perform on your final exam.
So is there anywhere that students can get like a concise breakdown of your little system?
Oh, yeah. Silly me. So what Pooyan is referring to is VNCO's very first free guide that was just put out, called Crush, the Prepared Law Student's Guide for Tackling Final Exam Preparation. And it is my 5-step system for mastering this process. And you can get it at our website, which is vncoprep.com.
I would have definitely benefited from this guide if I had access to it when I was a law student, and really it will change the way you prepare for final exams for the better.
And if he's saying that he likes something I made, you know it's good, right? I mean, that just doesn't happen.
Yep.
So we really hope that you'll download that and check it out, and then that you'll join us in the Facebook group if you have any questions about how it works, or just want to stop by and tell us that you like it.